had in common. Now, another interesting thing about these spirituals, of course, is that they were not an entirely African musical idiom. There are some things that they do have in common, rhythmically speaking and harmonically speaking, but it doesn't sound like African music exactly, and that's of course because it was mixed with the European musical tradition that the Africans adopted as a result of becoming Christians. Now, there are three types of spirituals. They fall into basically three categories. The first category is telling biblical stories as a means of teaching about the Bible and teaching all of the stories in the Bible, but I think more for learning life lessons, because you have to understand that they didn't have schools, they didn't have what we would consider to be a normal life, and so they pulled from whatever place they could. So the first category are biblical lessons. The second category are songs that speak directly to God. The singer is talking directly to God and expressing all of his or her worries, joys, sadnesses, frustration, even sometimes anger. The third category are community songs, and those songs, there is a group of singers, and there's one leader, and they go back and forth. It's an interchange and a play that happens. The next group of songs that I'm going to sing are very special to me. The first, This Little Light of Mine, is actually performed in many, many different ways. They change the melody. Traditionally, the melody for this song is, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. See if you can tell the difference.
This little
last song that Daniel played is called Amazing Grace. It's very well known in America and is an anthem of sorts. The interesting thing about that song is that it's actually not technically a spiritual. It was written by a man who was formerly a slave master, who after some time decided that what he was doing was wrong and ultimately became an abolitionist, fighting to free slaves. Now, after the end of the Civil War in the mid-1800s, when African Americans were freed, they didn't want to remember the spirituals anymore because, as I'm sure if any of you have a favorite song, when you listen to that song, there's a memory that goes along with it. Sometimes a very strong memory, and it may not necessarily be a happy one. They felt the same. So for about 20 or so years, the songs were lost. They are songs that have always been passed directly from person to person. They were never written down. And we, to this day, have no idea which slave composed which song. It wasn't until the 1870s, after the creation of one of the first historically black colleges in America, called Fisk University, that a group of students decided that they wanted to revive these songs, to bring them back to life, primarily because there were performances, musical performances, that involved African Americans, but they were usually portraying stereotypes. They weren't portraying the truth of what the African Americans' experience at that time really was. So these students decided that they would take the spirituals, they would arrange them to be performed in choirs. In fact, the choir was called the Jubilee Choir. And they traveled all over the United States and eventually traveled to Europe singing these songs in a traditional, accurate, and in a way that honored the former slaves. After that time, one more interesting fact too, actually, they made a recording eventually, later at the end of the 1800s, they made a recording, a record, that you can actually find online if you are interested. If you Google search Fisk Jubilee Singers early recordings, you can hear these early recordings. They're very beautiful. So again, after that time when they were revived, there was another lull of 20 or 30 years. And it wasn't until the 1920s or so, in New York City, during the time of the Harlem Renaissance, that spirituals were revived and arranged in the way that we're performing them for you this evening. The Harlem Renaissance was, I guess you could say, a hotbed of culture and art, music, poetry. The Harlem Renaissance had the beginnings of jazz. And the Harlem Renaissance happened during a time when African Americans finally began to find some stability in their day-to-day lives. They had more opportunity to have education. Of course, they still had to work hard, as most people do have to work hard, but the struggles were slightly less. And so there was space to have new creativity and to expand their musical experience. There was a gentleman named Harry Burleigh, who was a composer and an arranger who traveled to Europe and studied with a Czech composer named Antonín Dvořák. You may have heard of him before. And in fact, some of Dvořák's symphonies quote African American spiritual songs. It's very interesting. So Harry Burleigh, after studying with Dvořák, came back to the United States, and he decided that he wanted to take this vast body of spiritual songs and arrange them for voice and piano. But he also arranged them in a way that they would be sung operatically, in a sense elevating them so that they could be open to many, many people. Because once the song is written down, even if our culture changes, times change, people move, people die, and things get forgotten. But if it's written down, it's more likely to be saved. He preserved the melodies of the songs, so the melodies are always accurate, but what the piano is playing is completely his own. And there were a number of other composers who did the same thing. Hal Johnson, Roland Hayes, a number of people. The other thing that they preserved besides the melody is the way the songs were sung, the way the words were sung. Because you may have noticed that I'm not actually speaking or singing in correct English. For example, the next song I'm going to sing, and hopefully you'll sing it with me, I'm going to teach it to you. It's called Couldn't Hear Nobody Pray. And if I were to say it in correct English, it would be, I couldn't hear anybody pray, but this is couldn't hear nobody pray. And the reason why the composers decided to save the language is because the words are so simple and so profound, and the broken English is like the voice of each individual slave who created the song out of nowhere. So, are you ready to learn a spiritual? Yes? That didn't sound very enthusiastic. Okay, good. So the words, it's really easy, I promise. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Repeat. Couldn't hear nobody pray. One more time. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Excellent, okay. And the rhythm is, couldn't hear nobody pray. Repeat. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Good, again. Couldn't hear nobody pray. A little bit louder. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Good. Now, I'm an opera singer, so usually I sing by myself. But I have worked with some choirs before. If you're going to sing as a choir, you have to speak the words together. Let's try one more time. Ready? And 1, 2. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Good. One more time. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Excellent. The melody is? Couldn't hear nobody pray. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Again. Couldn't hear nobody pray. A little bit louder. Couldn't hear nobody pray. Very good. Now, the last thing is, because we've never rehearsed this before,